Welcome to Dialogue 340 once again here at the lovely Featherleaf Inn. I'm remembering this time that we have the wonderful pleasure of our Lieutenant Governor sitting in the seat with us. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So I'm going to let Daren kick us off.
All right. So first question I wanted to ask, I always like to dive into who's the unsung heroes. And I want to do a little bit of a twist because everybody for the majority of the time said it parents. Outside your parents, who was the first person to inspire you that led you onto this path that you're in now?
Well, I think really it would be my grandparents because I spent a lot of time with them when I was a child before I came to St. Thomas. And my grandparents were really people of the earth. They planted things and they gave us a really great value foundation. You know, my grandmother would say, if your neighbor has 12 shirts, that's not your business. If you have one, wash it out at the end of the day, put it to dry, and press it in the morning, and that's your business. You have no concern with what other people have. And my grandfather, who was originally from the island of Dominica, he had a great respect for the earth. And he was a great example of stewardship, both the land and animals. Remember, he had a donkey. And when we went to mountain to get the crops, he was like, well, you know, we can't ride a donkey going. You have to walk. Because when we get to mountain, he will bring everything back on his back. And so that's not, we can't break his back going and coming. So I think they were foundational. And I think the other part that I would put would be the teachers in the public schools. My parents, of course, but you say other than them. Teachers who believed in me. I remember one teacher in particular was Mr. Reginald Penn. He was our 10th grade English teacher at the Chalana High School. And one day he was reading from an exam that he had given us, saying it had taken a little while to grade the exam, so I forgot what I had written. And then he started to read the answer. I'm like, that sounds like me, right? And then he said, you know, Tregenza, you are a writer. You already are a writer. All you have to do is like grow up, you know?
Yeah.
Take it yourself and become, you know, an adult, but you're foundationally a writer. And I think they gave me a real sense of purpose. And I think in teaching myself as well, I have always wanted to give young people that kind of confidence that they instilled in me. Because when adults express their belief in you, it's empowering. And I think I have them to credit for that. I remember, and this is a fun aside too, because as a child, there was a woman who had a shop. Mrs. Paul was her name. And I would stop by the shop every morning. I'm just about 5 years old, right? And I would say, Mrs. Paul, my father said you should give me one of those, there's the candies on the counter. One of those, and he's going to pay you, you know, when he comes. No, he didn't say that. And Miss Paul, he didn't say that. But she didn't treat me as a thief or a liar. And I grew to feel like the village was going to take care of me, even though sometimes I might not be 100%, and they would not give me up because I might fail them. And so all of those working together, both influences when I did something correct, as well as when I didn't, I think all helped to really ground me in the sense of who I am and what things are important.
Okay, so I also want to transition, right? Because you had to do secondary education. What inspired you to take that path? And how did that led you to be a part of the legislature?
When I worked on a project for the university that took me to Indonesia, the United Nations got interested in the project. And that meant I had to fly, it was roughly about 27 hours to get to where I was going and 27 hours coming back. I traveled alone. I like to make notes, journal a lot. And when you do a project like that for the UN, to me, it's very sophisticated. First, you do an abstract so they could know that everybody's on the same page. Then when you get there, they introduce you, they receive you, you present your program, your report. They ask you good questions, and everybody applauds, when you finish. And when I was done with it, because it asked me to speak to the Virgin Islands, it asked me to speak about the diversity of the population, the challenge of writing a constitution, the challenge of educating people about self-government. And when I was finished, and as I was thinking about it on my way back, I said, Tregenza, a lot of us make fun with the legislature. At that time, it used to be green. It's beige now, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And they used to call it a green barn. You're too young to remember that, but they used to call it a green barn.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, people may make fun of it, but the decisions really affect your life. And you can't really afford to have a body affecting your life and your voice is missing from it. And I said to some friends of mine, I said, I need to move, because even in journalism, you are observing, you're writing, you're studying, you're just watching things. And I said to them, in life, you have to make the decision about moving from the periphery to actually being a part. I was at the university at the time. And they said, I said, I'm going to run for the Senate. And they said, we're going to support you. And they all came out and supported me. And when you run for the Senate the first time, if you live in a place long enough, you think you know everybody. And you think everybody knows you and they're going to vote for you, right? So when you lose, which I lost the first time. But I tell people, in life, you have to know the energy that comes with getting what you want. And you have to know the energy that comes from not getting what you want. There are things to learn either way. And so when I lost the first election, I was like, okay, all right, so what are you going to do? Do you tuck your tail between your legs and run away from it? Or do you think about what you can change? How did you approach it that you might need to do differently? And I thought about that, and look at the data, look at what happened in the election, look at the numbers, right?
Where did you place the first time you ran?
The first time I think was 9.
You were close.
Yeah.
That's close.
Yeah.
Very close.
Which made you feel good,
Yeah.
like 4,000 people said it was okay.
So what do you think about being a journalist and being a public servant? Like what kind of metrics did you learn about our community and what they say they want?
Yeah.
How you had tried to give them what they want and what actually we turn out to be?
Well, the most incredible part is that you learn about people. As a journalist, you have to talk to everybody. You come to a street and something has happened, and the only person there is a homeless person. You have to talk to them. They're not just a statistic. They're not just a commodity that is undervalued. You have to talk to the person who has been convicted of crime. You have to talk to the person who is innocent. You have to talk to the people who don't care about your community, who cuss bad word, big bad word after you until you don't ask them nothing. But you have to try, you have to ask them. And so you come to know people on a level that a lot of people do not. And the good part about it that ends up paying off when you get into the political sphere is that they know you too. They know that they can trust you with what they have shared, especially the idea in journalism that you protect your sources, so that they remain sources of good information. And then when you come into the legislature now, you have to confront an attitude that says all who want to be politicians and all who are politicians are the same. They're all liars, they're all crooks, they all tell you just what you want to hear. So you come from this place in a journalistic field of a lot of goodwill to no skepticism. And then you realize that just as you want people's trust in the public setting and the newspaper setting, you have to earn their trust in the legislative setting as well. When I first started to campaign, I knew that I had a problem. And the problem was people knew me. By then I was teaching at the university. By then I had written books. And so people had you in the scholarly context, the professor at UVI. I was teaching constitutional law. I was teaching in the master's program in education. And I think they thought that I would talk down to them. I would use big words to camouflage what I was trying to do or to sound erudite and thoughtful and knowledgeable. But I realized that what I needed to do was to break down things for people, to really help them understand what were the issues around a bill, what were constitutional challenges with a bill.
Yeah. And what were some of the things that you found that people weren't quite aware of?
Well, one of the things that was a problem was a lot of times people think about what they want. They don't think about the impact on community.
The collective impact?
Right. So good examples of those are like zonings. You know, they come to you and they want to rezone a property. And you're like, okay, so you bought a piece of land and it was zoned residential, and now you want to change it to commercial, and you're upset that the people who live on that street don't want it to be commercial. You know, they have a right to have an expectation that what they purchase is going to remain. You are the one who's seeking the change. And so that would sometimes be a challenge, how you would have to make people understand that you couldn't just go along with what it is they wanted because the community had a stake in it. And I would say to them, if everybody agrees, I good. But if you have one person who lives in a neighborhood who comes to me and says, I do not want my neighborhood to be zoned commercial, I'm going to go with them.
Did you have any eye-opening experiences when you officially got into the legislature and was like, wait, I wasn't ready for this, or I didn't know it actually operated like this?
Well, my first thing was when I registered to vote, I registered as a Democrat. And there were things about how I saw the party that I didn't particularly care for. And I said, you know,
You have to tell us what it is. You can't stay there.
I
was waiting for
You're being scholarly now.
Yes.
You're being scholarly now.
well, they looked like they were trying to tell people what to do.
And you came with your own
And
ideas.
how to vote, you know, that kind of stuff. So I said, and they also told me I couldn't get elected unless I ran as a Democrat.
Oh.
So I changed my registration and I changed to no party. I said, I'm going to show you that I'm going to get elected. And I did.
Yeah.
Elected as an independent. No party is what it is actually. And so here I am, elected for the first time in a district. There are 7 senators. The senator at large, of course, lives in the St. Thomas, St. John district. So there were 8 of us and 1 no party. 7 Democrats and 1 no party.
You're a majority or minority? Which one?
I'm not the one.
He's the one.
He's the one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
One of 8.
Okay.
So there's 7 Democrats in the St. Thomas, St. John district.
Okay.
And I was the one.
Okay.
And then over in St. Croix, we had Senator Nelson, Senator Hanson. That year, Judy Buckley had gotten elected, and Nellie O'Reilly was the 4th one. So there were 5 of us.
Right.
And so that was the first thing, how everybody in your district is on one side,
Yeah.
and then you're on this side. And what the challenge was, you know, my training in both journalism and law, what the value of it in me to this day is, I never expect people to agree with me. So it never offends me when I have an idea and somebody thinks differently, because I never expect anybody to agree with me. I expect that I'm going to have to convince you. So when you're a member of the minority, you have to shop everything around to everybody and try to get their help. And I remember one of my colleagues, it was Donald Duxco to the exact, and he said, Tregenza, you're going to find that, because you've been in the Senate before, you're going to find that the majority revolves around the issue. And even within the majority, they're going to have differences when people have diverse opinions.
What was one that you distinctively remember? An issue?
That split?
Yeah.
I think marijuana. The legalization of marijuana was one. A lot of people had very personal feelings about it.
Okay.
Based on how drugs might have affected their family members, based on their religious ideas. And so the party thing went down the drain. And we were all over the map with that. That was one. And then another one that I recall is when we had the idea about having a dolphinarium And so people were on different planes about the rights of animals, as an example, and whether we had any right to have animals in captivity, for our own entertainment. And so that differed, from just a straight party line. And then sometimes it would be the budget. We would just have differences of opinion about where money was spent, particularly maybe in some nonprofits. And then the other the distinguishing factor is that we live in a small place.
Very.
So it's very, very hard for a person to just go down the party line, each time. And you
Very
find
distinctive
that-
backgrounds, even though we're Caribbean, we all have different, heritage base.
Yeah. So those are some examples, but I think when people run for the Senate and I have any opportunity to speak to them, I say one of the most important things, no matter how great you think your ideas are, one of the most important things is you have to be able to work with people. You have to be able to convince people of your ideas. And the best way to be able to accomplish that is you have to respect people. You have to respect where people stand, and you have to respect that if you have an idea that you want to bring, you have the responsibility to bridge the understanding between where the person is, what they may believe, and what you think might be the good of the community to bring them to that place.
So let me ask a contrasting question. What was one piece of legislation that maybe majority of your colleagues didn't agree with, but you thought you were so convinced of it that you stood your ground? Do you have an example of a policy like that? Or sorry, a bill like that?
Yeah. One time, I studied the Virgin Islands VI Economic Development Authority. And when you get like a certificate from the authority, it talks about your hiring. And it has a percentage that you must hire locally, and then it has a percentage that you can bring in. There's also a waiver. And so the waiver says that you can get to bring in more people if you can demonstrate that the skill that you're looking for isn't present in the territory. And then you get a waiver to bring in more than the percentage. And I kept looking at it and I kept thinking, what I noticed is that when they bring in someone, a year later, that person is a resident. And so now that person counts as a resident in their hiring. And I said, I believe that for purposes of your certificate and for reporting, a person who comes in as a resident should remain as a non-resident, should remain as a non-resident for the life of their employment. It's different. It's distinguishing residents. It's not anything about voting, the right to own a house, the right to run for the legislature, wherever. But simply that in your reporting, you should carry those people as non-residents so that you're always meeting the thing you've agreed to in terms of growing your local field. Because my position was, when you bring in people, you invest in them too. You send them to conferences, you provide training. Why don't you try to build up the skills so that we have less and less opportunity of saying that skill isn't here. Several people thought that it was burdensome on the community, on the companies. Some got confused about residency, that I wasn't talking about residency and being a resident in the territory and any ways affecting that, but simply that we would be able to build up the pool of talent by not allowing you each time to say you're going outside for that skill and reduce the number of waivers that were being granted. So I had a rough time with that one. And of course, the companies
Didn't exactly enjoy that.
did
Right.
exactly like that.
One of the things, unfortunately,
seven.
we won through time on this
Yes.
conversation, and we're looking at the last 10 minutes. Your perspective has shifted from an educator, a journalist, a lawyer, to a part of the legislature. Now, as the lieutenant governor over the last 8 years, how has your perspective shift again?
I think one unfortunate thing is that most people don't understand the role of the lieutenant governor in the territory. And the reality is that it is different from most of the states. I'll give you an example. The lieutenant governor of the state of Rhode Island roughly about 1 million people, right? 10 times our population. She has 4 employees that are under her supervision. We've talked about that. I have 145. About 11 offices between St. John, the various places on St. Croix, and then on St. Thomas. We are the second largest generator of revenue for the government of the Virgin Islands, and we touch every real estate transaction in the territory. By the time I'm finished in the 8-year term, I would have ushered in close to $1 billion in taxes for the government of the Virgin Islands. So it's important that people not think about the lieutenant governor as like just basically waiting, in case something happens to the government and then you become the governor. Statutorily, our responsibility is very different from many of the states. And when I tell them about the revenue that I generate, some of them are surprised because in some cases, they do not run as a team. They are different. There might be a Republican governor and a Democratic lieutenant governor. Some of them only do what the governor designates for them to do. And if he doesn't tell them to do anything, then they just sit around. Some have security and some do not. So letting people understand that this office has an independent existence separate from the governor is a challenge. And then, of course, one of the differences with it is when you come from the legislature, that's very different because now people see me come from the legislature, they are accustomed to me speaking about bills, they're accustomed to me taking positions, and they want to know, well, why you don't say this against the governor, or why the governor do this, or why the governor do that? And you're constantly letting them know, I've agreed by making this decision to be the second person in this administration. And there's one governor at a time. And similarly to the role of lieutenant governor, the role of governor in the Virgin Islands is very different from that of some states as well. And you have to know historically why that is so, because that kind of emanates from the fact that we used to have governors appointed by the president.
56 years, only 56 years of, yes.
And so they wanted that person to have a lot of autonomy so that they could direct everything that happens in the territory. So if I want to hire you as an example, he has to agree. If I want to give you a raise, he has to agree. No, I would have to say the government has given me no challenge in that regard. He's hired the people, given them whatever compensation that I desire. But the point is, he doesn't have to. So that is an important thing in helping people to understand the statutory responsibility. And one of the important things that has happened in this term of my being lieutenant governor is before we used to always wait on the legislature to impose tax amnesties where you could pay your taxes without penalties and interest. And, when I was reviewing the statute with my counsel, and it's good to have attorneys, and I confer with them as well, right? And we were like, well, the statute gives me authority to waive interest and penalties for a taxpayer. Okay. So then I could waive it for all of them at the same time. So I could do my own amnesty.
There you go.
Right, and so we did some of those as well. So again, it gives you a place to evolve, but it's also very important for people to know and understand that the role is very specific. It gives me authority over the assessment of property, the collection of taxes, the formation of corporations, etc. The good part of it, and the exciting thing about being in a political atmosphere is that you actually get to help people, and you can see that happening right there.
What's a good example of something that you're really proud of, that your office was able to provide some sort of economic relief or boost to citizens since your leadership as lieutenant governor?
Well, the amnesties for sure.
Sure, okay.
Because saving people's property, is important. So I think we've probably done about 5 of those. And the other thing, we have a major fund of unclaimed property because the lieutenant governor is the custodian of unclaimed property. So all those accounts that people close in banks and for lost passbooks or whatever the case may be, the institutions are required to turn the monies over to the Office of Lieutenant Governor. And now we've done a lot of technological advancement in the office. So we've actually done a website where you can search your parents, your grandparents, your uncle, your sister, your brother, anybody, and we can actually begin claims online. We may have to have you supported with additional documents that you may not be able to upload, but you can actually begin the claim. So we've done that. Another exciting thing is the educating people about. They come in and they ask you. I remember one because we now have the portal,
Okay.
the real estate portal, real property portal, and there are people who don't know their circumstances. So maybe
What do you mean by circumstances?
well, say you have an elderly parent and you have a brother or sister. You might be living in the States and you might be sending money so that the property is never in jeopardy.
okay. All right.
And your brother or sister is telling you that they pay the taxes, you know? And then you can go on the portal and you can see it.
See it, okay.
And so that's a good thing. And some people think that estates have been settled. So they think that, I remember one lady calling me and asking about her father owning a piece of property in St. Croix. This is St. Thomas. And I'm like, give me the number. Because I can do that too. I can just take a phone call and I can go in and I can do that. And I'm like, sweetheart, that property is still in his mother's name.
Yeah.
And because they're
Probate problems, look earlier.
Probate is
Probate.
the problem. Yeah.
Oh,
Probate.
but because they're only the two heirs
Right.
are still alive, this is the time to do it. Because if one of those heirs die, you have now the heirs of that heir, and it keeps getting larger. So right now, because there are only two of them, this is the best time to seize the opportunity to take forward. So you get an opportunity. Because, you know, people, we live in this small place, and I go to the grocery, I go to Carsulus in St. Croix, I go to Mid-Island Menswear, I go to everywhere, and people will come up and they'll say, you know, I know this isn't the right time, but I'm having a problem with so-and-so. And then you can tell them, call the office, speak to such and such a person, tell them I told you to call them, and ask them this question. So the opportunity to help people is really present on any number of levels.
And I want to thank you for clarifying that. As you notice, we take our time to get the backstory to understand where you are in your position, and clarifying the distinction between governor and lieutenant governor, and how, you know, we're not trying to create contention. You have your own purview, your own responsibilities. But unfortunately, we're running out of the time for our first half hour. The second half hour, we're going to now talk about you in the leadership role, some of the plans that you have, some of the initiatives you have, and maybe some of the things in the 8 years you couldn't really get your hands on that you're looking to get your hands on in the next 4 years if you are successful through the Democratic and the general. So thank you once again, Dialogue 340. We're going to be right back, Daren. It's going to be time for the trickle.
Trickle down.
All right, we'll be right back.